Hello, folks. My wonderful Adidas. Um, it's another video I'm doing um, on my thoughts, specifically my opinions on diversity in media. Because this type of shit has sort of gotten to the point where I'm just like, you know, some of these dudes are just grifting on the internet. But the fact of the matter is, right? When we talk about diversity in media or things like the male gaze, this is a problem. And I've noticed this problem specifically with certain genres of stuff that I like, right? Like comics or superhero media or any sort of media that I like, right? I've noticed these things becoming a problem. And this is why diversity is important, right? Because when the perspective of diversity is just one group of people, particularly just white men as writers, you got problems. Now, I'm not saying not every white guy can't pull it off. There are white dudes who can pull it off very, very well, that are really good directors, that can pull that shit off with flying colors. And that's because, again, it depends on the experience. Those white directors had much more in contact with people of color in their lives than, let's say, other writers or other creators. But in Hollywood, this is, of course, a massive problem. And another issue that I see that's another issue is certain framing in terms of the quote unquote being woke, whatever the fuck that means. Now, this issue is a big problem when it comes to gaming because from what I've noticed, um, I mean, the gaming community has always been shit to begin with. But I mean, I know because I used to be part of this. I used to be part of this community, and even I saw it. I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Um, but some media, is there any good politics in a lot of media? No, not really. But for what I could tell with gaming, this was an issue in terms of. I'll get to the male gaze part of it. When it came to gaming, one of my biggest problems that I've always had was how certain female characters were designed or how women are portrayed in certain ideas of media. Because sometimes, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not that I don't like. There's a time for if there's a purpose for why you're sexualizing the character, and then there's a point where you're just like, what the fuck is this? And I'm that type of guy who, when I watch my media and there's a female character in it, and I see bullshit for no reason, and I'm not even listen. I'm not a prude. I'm a very sexual person. But the problem is, I'm watching the media and I'm just like, why the fuck is she wearing a bikini? And I'm supposed to take this seriously. Why is she wearing a bikini battle armor thing and I'm supposed to take this seriously? See, that bullshit pisses me off. It's like playing it's like certain female characters in fighting games. Like what some of they're wearing. Some of them are wearing. I'm just like, huh? Like for example, I've always been a big Street Fighter guy. Some of the female characters in Street Fighter. Uh, I mean, Street Fighter is a whole nother conversation. But some of these female characters, it's like you understand where people talk about what male gaze is. Yeah, you can see it. It's fairly obvious, right? It's not something that you just can't see. You see it. This ran into an issue that I had with certain costume designs. I remember I had this argument with this is comic book stuff, so if you guys don't give a shit about this, it's fine. You can tune yourself out. But but I had an issue with how certain female characters of the X-Men were dressed, and I was just like, well, Storm, she's always been dressed fine in the '90s. The way they never really tried to sexualize her, though there's a reason why. Because to be honest, this goes into black women and How a lot of sisters in media tend to be desexualized, um, depending on what framing it is. Black women, it's women of color. Yeah. I don't need to go into that because we all know the situation there. So Storm has always been not overly, but other characters that I've always found like that I like in the X-Men that I've always thought were like dumbass designs, even though fans would attack me and be like, "Oh, how could you say this is a classic design?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's a dumbass design." For example, I didn't mind Rogue's costume in the '90s. It was a little tight for me, but but I didn't mind her costume in the '90s. Um, and they kind of brought it back in the modern comics, the current comics that I'm currently reading, and I'm just kind of like, I kind of miss when she wore the green, when she had that on, because you know, I felt like I took her a little bit more seriously when she wore that costume instead of the other one. Um, Another female character that I really don't like her costume in the X-Men was, of course, um, I never cared for Psylocke's costume. Her costume always bothered the fuck out of me, but that's a whole nother. That's a whole nother conversation. I mean, Emma Frost, you can argue that's the point. So I don't know. Even then, I'm kind of, but yeah, Psylocke. I always felt like she's a very combat-heavy character. Her classic costume with the weird onesie, I always thought that was like that is unnecessary of a costume design. That is ridiculous and absurd. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind women having skin. It's not an issue with that. It's just that if I'm reading a story, and I'm supposed to be taking the story seriously, and your female character's dressed, it's not like I'm playing Bayonetta and it's like overly exaggerated, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is supposed to be ridiculous. I mean, I get it, right? But if it's supposed to be a story I'm supposed to take seriously, and this shit is happening, I don't know, man. I'm sort of in this mode where I'm like, the fuck is going on? So this is another issue in terms of male gaze. Again, this is what happens when you don't have more female writers writing certain things. Another issue, uh, this goes to my point about diversity. You can't have a story that is just written just by all white guys and expect, because let me tell you something. These sort of SJW, or whatever they call themselves, the anti-SJW man children, these dudes don't, like, they're basically mad that they themselves aren't being represented as white men. And they're mad that they are losing their control of their space. I saw this with the gaming community. The gaming community is much worse. Hollywood or movies, there are issues with the diversity, but at least, that's the teeny difference. At least they're attempting to have conversations and actually try, right? Because we've fought for that, we've asked for that, right? Gaming community, we're not there yet. I don't feel like we're there yet, unfortunately, right? Because, first off, there was a time in, I think, 2010 where all the main characters looked like bald-headed, shaved white dudes with a 5 o'clock shadow. And for some reason, that's presented as, oh, he's an everyman character. The fuck? So he's an everyman character when he's a shaved, bald-headed white guy. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. And in all honesty, this is why diversity of media is important, because you can tell more broader, better stories with more different writers to represent different experiences, right? That would make sense, you know? You have the potential to write more better stuff with and have more broader, diverse stories being told. You know what I mean? So, and more different messages, right? And this idea that, oh, we can't have politics in our media, especially gaming. And I always found this hilarious because it's like, then we can't really tell serious stories if that's what you're talking about then. Because these bros, they're hilarious. These are the same guys that were bitching and moaning about, man, we want our media to be taken seriously. Listen, being taken seriously doesn't mean hyper realistic graphics. Realism as aesthetic does not mean you're taken seriously. What's taken seriously is the storytelling that you're being told. But of course, when we try to do that, and I know this gaming community, we decide, well, this game is garbage because of its politics. So I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, how did y'all motherfuckers play Metal Gear Solid? That's a whole nother conversation. It's like, did you guys just like the story of the mech and didn't understand what Kojima was saying? I mean, that's the only explanation. For that regard. Um, Same thing with there's something else. The same thing that's happening currently with. I know the game has issues, and the way the game was created, it had issues because of the crunch thing. But the story of Last of Us Part 2, right, was great. It was a very complex, really amazing tale of a revenge plot with particularly female characters, which is something that you don't really see in media that much. You don't see stories about a revenge plot because in Last of Us Part 2, the brilliance of what they did was they subverted the revenge plot because usually the revenge plot usually involves a male character that is involved. This time they subverted. They said, nah, the revenge plot is female character going after female character. That is the revenge plot. Right? That was a subversion of that plot. And yes, is the story like, hey, don't have revenge? Yeah. That's the whole point of the story. But it's a beautifully well done story, and I like it. But of course, some people in the gaming community were pissed off because because Joel got killed. The rough and gruffled white guy got killed in the game, and they're like, "Oh no, he got killed! Oh, revenge!" You know, it's like, come on, guys. I mean, really, we're just gonna be surface level with storytelling here. And I get it. Gaming is a different medium, so the way you tell stories into the narrative is different. But at the same time, seriously, we're gonna make anti-trans jokes. We're gonna complain that the two characters who are Ellie it was confirmed that she was a lesbian. So I don't know why the fuck that was like a surprise to some of these guys. Um, you're mad that the two lesbian characters are not over sexualized. Because let me tell you something. Ellie and Dina, the reason why I liked their character designs was that I can look at those women and be like, you know what? I can see Ellie and Dina. I can see those chicks in real life because they actually use face models of real women. um, I could actually see those women in a general premise of like the world that I live in. Like I could basically, if I go to Seattle, I'll probably see some chick that looks like Ellie. Not saying every white girl that looks like Ellie lives in Seattle. That's not what I'm saying. But the point is, it's like I could see them because they look like real people. They're not these overly glorified, sexualized images of female characters. They're women that I could go in and be like, oh, I could, yeah, she looks like a girl that I went to high school or I went to college with, you know? And the whole thing with, the Abby situation, that's a whole nother thing. That was ridiculous. The whole like, oh, well, she must be trans. The fuck? Because she's muscular? I mean, I'm sorry, like, things got so ridiculously absurd to that point where it was just like, this is a joke, right? Like, y'all are freaking out over a woman who's like, I mean, okay. I mean, whatever. But hey, folks, this is the gaming community, so I mean, is that a surprise? Um, but yeah, I mean, this is not a surprise to me. When I saw the crap going online with that, I mean, this game got vicious hate for no reason, right? And just unnecessary. Just unnecessary hate. And people still consider, oh, it killed the franchise. No, it didn't kill the franchise, dude. You were mad that it did something. See, this is a problem with gaming, all right? If you don't want, this is kind of like anti-art in a sense, because you don't want stories to evolve to a point. You wanted a certain narrative of the story, you didn't get it, so now you hate it because it was subverted. That's not how art works. You're not the writer of these stories. Maybe a lot of this has to do with the bad faith criticism stuff, and I suggest people check Cheyenne Lin's YouTube page. I'll put it in the description. She made a really good point about, the rise of that sort of criticism, but particularly more so in film. But I'm starting to see that a lot in gaming, where they're expecting a certain thing. And it's the same thing with, I'm not gonna talk about the God of War crap, because that is just flimsical bullshit with the thing with Agroboda or whatever. I'm not gonna talk about that. But these were the same. I remember these guys were getting mad that God of War PS5, the new one coming out, looked the same. They're like, oh, the game isn't changed. And someone brought up a great point in the comment where they said, hold on a minute. So you want these game developing artists to basically work their asses off, right? Like, you essentially want them to work their butts off yet again, just so you can get hyper realistic graphics? I mean, what the fuck is that? I mean, seriously. You want these people to work, these developers who are people, to work even harder on a game that they already worked. I mean, Santa Monica Studios, they worked fairly well on the first game. They're gonna do new quirks, new environments, new things like that. You want the employers, the employees to work even harder to give you realistic graphics. Do you know how much time and money that takes? And the work stress and the labor to do that? And these gamers are like, nah, we want hyper realistic graphics. So you wanted God of War 2, the new one, to be a completely different game with hyper realized super graphics. No. And I'm happy Santa Monica was like, no, we're not doing this. We already have something that we did. It cuts the stress of the people that work at our studio. So they don't have to crunch. Because they have the template for the game already. All we have to work on is the narrative and the story. The only people that are probably going to work a little bit harder are the people who are writing the story and doing the story outline for the next game. Because now the other developers who worked on the environments and things, it's much more easier for them because they have the good layout, the gameplay is still the same. They just new weapons, new animations. That's it. They don't have to bust their asses off to do a completely different game and do hyper realistic graphics because you dumbasses are like, oh my god, ray tracing. The fuck cares, man? I mean, I really don't give a crap about the whole. I'm starting to like really not give a crap about hyper realistic graphics. It depends. Like, I don't mind when they do it, but I know at the same time those developers worked hard, and I like it when developers are like, you know what? If we're gonna do a hyper realistic game, you know what? Let's wait 5 years, 6 years to do the game. We don't have to rush this thing out within 3 years and do crunch and, fuck up everyone's mental health. Nah, guys, take your time. We'll do it in 6 years. Kind of like how Kojima does with his studio, with the Metal Gear games, where he tells his team, hey, we're going to take a while to make this game, but, we're going to take some time. And that's why Konami hated that Metal Gear Solid 5 was made the way it was made. Because they were like, because Konami wanted to rush that game. And that's why Kojima decided, I'm done with this company. I'm going to make the best game that I can, that my team made. But y'all motherfuckers is mad that I'm making an expansive game, and Konami, you don't want to spend the money. Even though you know that it's me, Kojima, so you're going to get the money, but y'all don't want to wait. Y'all wanted to rush Phantom Pain now. That's why the chapter 3 of Phantom Pain was cut. So there's only 2 chapters because Konami, you got to blame the company for that, and that company just went. Konami just hit to the curb. It's just a complete fuck up company now. Because they were too greedy and they lost their biggest star at the company, Kojima, and a lot of his team. They're just like, yo, we out. Fuck you. We're gonna go work with Kojima Productions over there. We're done with you. Because Konami were dumb because they wanted to rush Phantom Pain. The game is still beautifully made. It's still an amazing Metal Gear game, and I'm glad that Konami got to finish what he wanted in the story. It sucks we didn't get chapter 3, which would have, would have showed us more of, Liquid Snake and his motivations in the story. That's for you Metal Gear folks. But, but, they cut it. And this is what I'm talking about, right? This goes into the crunch thing. So, again, diversifying the media, overall, my point in the video is important because you allow for more better stories being told, not just certain perspectives from certain people that only get it, right? Same thing with male gaze and everything, because you don't see fully realized female characters, right? And me personally, I'm a guy who's kind of getting annoyed at the male gaze, just a little bit, because I'm watching it and I'm just like, guys, I don't need this female character to dress in this way or to do that in a story that's serious. All right? Like this, this is ridiculous. So, same thing with people of color. You have more chances to diversify the media, to create better stories. And I think this is important. And frankly, we need more of that in our media. And those are my overall thoughts. I know this went from diversifying media to labor and gaming. I'm sorry, but it needs to be discussed because I know gaming is an industry that is still not, it's not on the level where it is. It is, and when people try to do something different in the gaming industry, they're just sort of attacked because we have a bunch of man children who don't want to let go of their toys in a vehement way, compared to TV in Hollywood, where at least you see that there's attempts to change. The gaming community, unfortunately, it's hard. We're still stuck in this sort of thinking because this is what happens. My point about diversifying media. This is what happens when you have a medium that's just men, most of them white, and not a lot of women and people of color in it. This is what happens. People of color have been playing games for a long time, and just as women have been playing games a long time. This idea that women and all that don't play games is a load of hog shit. It's not true. Women play video games just as much as men do. It's nonsense to even make that claim. They may like different types of games, and I'm sort of liking this because there are certain games that I feel that don't need to be like combat related games. For example, right? Like a good example, this is my opinion on this whole thing, about my opinion on like combat related games. Let's do this part quick. My whole thing is this. Not every game needs to involve combat. That's number one, right? And also, there are certain stories in media of certain characters that you don't really need combat. I'll give an example. Let's look at a good example I have is like the Batman Arkham games, right? Those games were pretty combat heavy. But here's the difference. You can make a game about Batman without combat because you can actually do a sort of noir Batman story where it's just about figuring things out. Combat is just sprinkled into the game just a little bit for certain occasions, like when you confront a character or something. But most of the game is figuring things out. I wouldn't mind if I played more games like that, where it's like I'm figuring things out. And there are stories where it's more like I can figure stuff out. I can figure the world around me instead of trying to shoot something. Or always constantly fight something. Or have better combat systems that are much more better and more like, oh shit, this is actually pretty cool combat where it feels like there's a point. You know what I mean? It's not like this is why I personally have always been drawn to like, you know, the Devil May Cry series, because the combat has always been about being flashy. You're not taking yourself seriously with the combat. That's why enemies float when you play Devil May Cry. When you hit them, and the idea is just they're not supposed to fall to the ground. They're supposed to do these trick moves up in the air while you're fighting them and keeping them in the air. And I've seen people who are really good at Devil May Cry online. I've seen them play it, and it is beautiful to watch. I swear to you, the combat, some of these guys, what they do with keeping that enemy afloat, that is just art right there. And that's what I mean. I want to see in terms of like combat-based games, even if if they exist. Even though I don't mind playing non-combat games, I think there should be more of them. If you're gonna do combat-based games, be unique with it. Don't just do the same shit. And not everything needs to be a shooter. Not everything needs to be like, I'm gonna shoot this person. I mean, seriously. But that's my little rant. So, hope y'all enjoyed that. And I'll probably have another video coming up. But y'all have a good one.